a separate view, and I will also wrap each of the timer parts into its own text components. So I start from here. Let's move it here and here, and I close the text tags here and here. Let's save. Okay, now I need to set the proper size for these timer parts. I go to the timer style. Let's start with some value, let's say 150. 150 is quite a lot, but the values are aligned vertically because I need to set flex direction for the timer component. So let's get back to timer and set style to styles timer container. And let's set it as flex direction row. Okay, now we can see that 150 is a lot. Let's try with 100. It's too small because it doesn't fit a single line, so let's increase it. Okay, should be good. Now when I press the start button, you can see that it is in fixed position. Now I need to do the same with the styling of the lab text component. Let's start with some initial width. Let's say 50. Okay, it's too much. Let's try 30. Yeah, it's better. I think we can leave it like this. When the timer is running, there is a different set of buttons rendered. Let's create a button row for them. So I just copy this buttons row. And when it is running, we've got a lab button that looks just like the reset button, and we've got stop button. Let's pick the styling of the stop button. First the background color, and now the text color. This first row should be rendered only when the app starts and no buttons have been pressed. It happens only when the labs array is empty. Let's render it conditionally. Labs length equal to 0, and now I will move this whole button row inside the parents. The lab and stop buttons are present when the timer is running, that is, when the state start property is greater than 0. I will render it conditionally as well. So start greater than 0, and now parents, and I move the buttons inside. Now when I restart the app, I can see start at the beginning. When I press start, I see lab and stop. That is okay. Let's implement the handler methods for lab and stop buttons. So for stop, I will rename it to this stop, and for lab, it will be okay. for lap button, the handler function is named this lap. Lap is equal to a method. When the lap is pressed, I insert a new lap at the first position of the lap array. So const first I get the laps from the state, so this state, and now I call this set state, and laps becomes 0 at the beginning, and now all the other lap that existed before. Let's start and test it. This does not save current split time, as it's 0 all the time. I should first save the current timer value into the laps array. I also need to reset start and now with the current timestamp value, so that the new lap counts from 0, because now when I press lap, the counting continues, although the number changes. So let's update the lap function. First, I get the current timestamp, so const timestamp is equal to new date get time. Next, I need not only laps here, but also now and start. I also need to access the first lap, because only the first lap will be updated with the current timer value. And I could use ES6 spread operator for that. So first lap, and now other, and this equals to laps. What this line does is takes the laps array and puts the first element into first lap variable and the tail of the array into the other variable. Now I can modify our set state call a bit. First, 0 remains as it was, but the second element is first lap increased by current timer. So I add now and subtract start, and after it goes all the rest, so other. I also reset start and now with timestamp. Okay, let's save it, and now start and lap. Okay, you can also see that now the lap with the number does not fit a single line. This is because we use the same styling as for the timer, so let's modify it a bit and introduce another style which will be called lap timer, and it will only have the width of 30. Lap text is unchanged. Now I go to the lap and I add styles lap timer style to the timer only. When I refresh, the lap number is displayed correctly. Let's test it. So this was the fastest lap. Now this is the fastest one. The longest one is 7 seconds, so let's wait a bit. Okay, it's 8. I press lap, current lap, zeros. I can scroll the laps. But when I press lap, I don't want this main timer to be zeroed each time. To make it work, I shall add the duration of previous laps to have the main timer show the total time that has passed. So let's get back to the app component where we call the timer. Okay, and here we have the timer, but we'll also add the values of all the laps, and I will use ES6 reduce function for that. This function takes two parameters. First, this is a function that takes accumulator value and current element, and I will just add it, and the second parameter is initial value. So let's split it and I will explain how it works. So reduce starts with the first lap, and this is car, and it adds its value to the total amount, which at the beginning is 0. Then it goes through each element and increases the total value. So this way we've got all the laps added together and we add current timer to it. Now when I press the lap button, the timer is not zeroed. The stop method is similar to the lap. I will just start with copying it. So stop is equal to, and I will copy the body. First, in the stop method, we need to clear the timer so that the time is no longer updated. So I reference the timer that we created in the start method. In the stop method, I don't add a new lap, and I also want to reset start and now and set it to zeros. So I don't need this timestamp. So now each time that stop is pressed, start and now are set to zeros. You can see that we miss the reset and resume buttons. So let's add them now. Reset and resume buttons are displayed in situation when we've got some laps in the state lap array, but the timer is stopped. So let's add the condition for it. So we've got laps length greater than 0 and start is equal to 0. So the first button is reset and the second one is start. So let's call the methods reset and resume. For the resume button, I use the same styling as for the start button. Okay, and reset buttons looks just like the lap button. I start the app, press stop, and the buttons are rendered correctly. Reset clears the state to its initial values. So it's pretty simple. Reset is equal, and now this set state, and I just set everything here to initial values. So laps becomes an empty array, start becomes 0, and so does now. Okay, when I now start the timer, press stop, reset, it's working. Let's implement resume now. Okay, so resume sets state and now to current timestamp and starts the timer again. So first, let's get the current timestamp. Const now is equal to new date get time, and let's set the start and now with and assign it to now. So this set state start becomes now and now becomes now as well. When we resume, we don't touch the laps array because we don't add anything or remove. The next thing to do is to start the timer again. So we do this the same way like in the start method. So let's copy it